Hi, I'm your host, Smokey Cole Bear, filling in for Smokey because after 75 years of...
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Turns out there's much more to say. Nearly 90% of wildfires are caused by us humans being careless, dumping our used barbecue coals willy-nilly. Guess the song was wrong. We did start the fire. That's why I respect Mother Nature and her trees, whether coniferous or new car scented. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
Check them out. Are you ready? Here it comes. Cosmic Tuesdays. And hello everybody, and welcome to Cosmic Tuesdays once again, which is heard every Monday evenings, because I'm just weird that way. My name is Anthony Picco. I am your host, as I always am. This is my show. I am a professional astrologer with 37 years of experience at this point, and I have studied a lot about the mystical and the metaphysical. I've met ghosts, I've argued with spirits, all kinds of fun stuff, and I have created this show because I want to share that with you. I want to go out and find people and interview them and share it with you, and hope you realize there's far more of us than they realize. We often get dismissed and laughed at by, the mainstream media. Oh, they're a witch. Oh, they're astrologers. Oh, tee-hee-hee. And that's just not true. We're everywhere, and we've been keeping doing it for centuries. And look, if you live in a large city and you're in an apartment building, I'm 99% sure there's somewhere in that building is going to be, an astrologer, a tarot card reader, psychic, or somebody. And you know what? If you're from a small town, you all know that guy or woman at the end of the lane with the weird house and has the strange things. So we are everywhere. And by we, I'm just saying those of us that are more open. We're not just logic-based. We're not just left brain-based. And I'm not knocking science or anything else, but I think there's so much more we can do if we expand ourselves outward. Today is Monday, February 5th, and I just want to encourage you, if one of the reasons I do the show, I forgot this point, I really like to see you, and you listen. If you like something somebody says, you're saying, hey, I should do that, make it yours, do it. And even if the same person then says something you don't like, then don't make it yours. I think this is a wonderful period of time where it'd be good for all of us to create our own spiritual connection to the universe, God, all that is what you want to connect it. I'm not against religions, but I feel sometimes they get a little skewed. So if you can create your own spirituality for yourself and your connection to the universe, wonderful. The only things I absolutely insist upon, like I have any authority here, is that you must have your religion that you create for yourself be compassionate, empathetic, sympathetic, and understanding, and connecting to the rest of the world. Ideally, don't create a religion where you dig a hole under your house and don't come out, because we need everybody here. I'm a big fan of the Seth material, and he says we need everybody on this planet. It's a group effort. So I just want to remind you, everybody, you're part of this, and even if you don't feel like you're part of it, it doesn't matter. You are. Okay, astrology. All right, I got it on my window here somewhere. Just give me 1 second, because I have there we go. Today, as you know, astrology, sun is in Aquarius, moon is in late Sag, Mercury just entered Aquarius, which isn't bad. Mercury in Aquarius is usually kind of forward-thinking, and it just seems to me, given the news lately, 30 days of forward-thinking wouldn't hurt anybody. Venus is at 16 degrees Cap, Mars is at 24 degrees Cap, and Jupiter is at 7 degrees Taurus. Saturn is at 7 degrees Pisces. Uranus is at 19 Taurus. Neptune is at 25 Pisces. And Pluto, as many of you know, just wiggled into Aquarius last week. It will wiggle out later in the year and then finally be in Pluto by the end of the year for the next 20 years. So that's going to be a little bit of a shift. Nothing is retrograde right now, which is unusual. I do want to mention briefly, Jupiter will be conjuncting Uranus. Right now, Jupiter's at 7 Taurus, and Uranus is at 19. And by April, Jupiter and Uranus will be kind of mushed together. And this happens about every every 14 years roughly. And it's a challenging change because Uranus is all about sudden change, radical ideas, a certain amount of chaos, a certain amount of radical freedom. And Jupiter's basically the planet that says, go ahead, do it. Jupiter's the planet of optimism and enthusiasm and moving forward and learning new stuff. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see some unexpected surprises in April. And I don't even know what they are. I'm not a mundane astrologer. But I will say it does seem like the next year or two, there will be some shifts. Uranus, as I said, is a planet of constant change and surprise. When Uranus went into Aries in 2010, it was when we had the Arab Spring, and suddenly people all over were beginning to rebel and start saying, no, we can't have this. We want to be who we are, not who you tell us to be. So it's always an idea of new ideas and new concepts and expansion with it. I do want to mention, though, Saturn and Neptune. Right now, Saturn's at, I think I said 7 earlier. Is that right? Yeah, and Neptune's at 25. But by 2025 in March and into 2026, Saturn and Neptune will reunite. This does not happen very often. It's an interesting combination because Saturn is the planet of physical reality, responsibility. Can I touch it? Can I feel it? Is it real? Is it physically here? And Neptune is about anything but. Neptune is like your stoned friend going, oh man, everything's okay, dude, really. Because Neptune is about all the spiritual things in life. So when Saturn and Neptune get together, there's a real struggle between fantasy and fact. So just to give you an idea, let's roll back. 1914, there was some confusion with Saturn and Neptune, and we ended up having World War I. Early 1950s, Saturn and Neptune reunited, and we had McCarthyism, where the fantasies about communism ended up blacklisting lots of people. The practical end result was Saturn. Neptune was the one that had this kind of fantasy. 1989, we're talking the end of AIDS, the whole issue of what's really going on, what kind of things we do to stop things or create things. It doesn't have to be a negative thing necessarily. Ideally, Saturn and Neptune can work together and focus the spirituality. So that's something for you to consider out there in 2025 and 2026. Try to use Saturn and Neptune to focus your spirituality and not necessarily have delusions that you then act on, is the best way to put it. Okay? So 2025 and 2026 is when we get Saturn and Neptune conjunct once again. And I think those are all my notes. So, tonight is our guest. I stumbled across this guest online, and she seemed interesting, and I decided to check her out, and I got her for the show, and then it turns out that I hooked myself a big one. And don't take that personally, but she's a humdinger. She's written 109 books and number of magazines and played music and made paintings. And I thought I was just getting somebody to interview, and now I've got like a major person here, which I'm honored to have. Her name is Marilynn Hughes. You can locate her at www.outofbodytravel.org is the best place to look for her. When you go there, there are links to Facebook and all the other social things that you can tune into her stuff, or you can join her on Facebook. She's quite a character, and I mean that in a loving, interesting way. Marilynn Hughes founded the Out of Body Travel Foundation in 2003. The mission was to reduce spiritual hunger worldwide. I love that. Marilynn has experienced, researched, written, and taught about out-of-body travel and mysticism since 1987, and has spoken on dozens of radio and television programs to discuss her thousands of out-of-body experiences. She has studied the ancient sacred texts of all major and minor world religions, as well as Catholic, mystical, aesthetical, biblical, doctrinal, dogmatic, systematic, liturgical, catechetical, I have trouble with that one, and moral theology. She's also studied individual schools of thought, there's a lot of bio here. Individual schools of theology to include Franciscan, Carmelite, Ignatian, Dominican, and Benedictine. Marilynn also has trained as a remote viewer in dimensional, controlled, and associative remote viewing, and is a hypnotherapist. She's received certifications in various psychological and therapeutical modalities, including, and this is alphabet soup, folks, NLP, REBT, CBT, ACT, DBT, MBCT, EFT, which I've studied, Emotional Freedom Technique, TFT, SFBT, and NBA therapies. Marilynn has, get ready for this, folks, Marilynn has authored 109 books. 40 magazines, and 18 CDs on out-of-body travel and comparative religious mysticism, including her seminal classic, The Mysteries of the Redemption, a treatise on out-of-body travel and mysticism, which is now in development to become a feature film TV series. I do want to point out, I started reading this book. I often read books for the guests that come on my show. I had no idea what I was getting into. The written part of the book is 435 pages, and there's an additional paintings, lists of music, and all kinds of stuff in the back, bibliography. I'm going to finish the book. It is an amazing book. It's the kind of thing where you will... there's so much cross-references, and I'm not saying literally, it's not like it's full of footnotes, but that you can see how she's comparing this spiritual discipline with this is what happened to her, and that's what history says about it. So it's really a very rich... I'll be reading this book for a couple of months, picking it up from time to time and just looking at stuff. It's overwhelming, but in a good way. It's like, yes, it's like all the pieces are here. Now I know what I have to look at. So while we're at it, she's the author of an English language encyclopedia of ancient sacred texts, The Voice of the Prophets, Wisdom of the Ages, in 12 volumes. Her out-of-body travel work has been featured in the Encyclopedia of the Unseen World by Constance Victoria Briggs, and in Extraplanetary Experiences, Alien-Human Contact and the Expansion of Consciousness, along with Dr. Edgar Mitchell and Ingo Swann by Thomas Stryker. Casey Armstrong, former producer of The Howard Stern Show, in his book named Marilynn as one of 13, quotes, simply amazing women. I will tend to agree. Marilynn has been the subject of several research studies, including the out-of-body experiment by Alex Tsatsakiris, I hope I pronounced that right, of Skeptico. She has been featured to speak about out-of-body travel on Coast to Coast AM with George Noory, and Midnight in the Desert with Art Bell, and many others. Marilynn Hughes was on the original board of the Dr. Edgar Mitchell Foundation for Research into Extraordinary Experiences and is a continuing contributor. She's also had an NDE. Last paragraph, she also came across her vocation unexpectedly. When she was 9 years old, she had her first profound out-of-body experience wherein she saw the heavens open and a beautiful marble staircase surrounded by angels which led to the throne of God. In this experience, she was told many things, among them that he would return to her later in her life to give her a mission to fulfill in relation to out-of-body travel. When she was 22 years old, she had her first out-of-body experience in adulthood and began the process of journaling, which would unleash thousands of out-of-body travel and mystical experiences over the next decade. Now, even with a bio that long, I'm still going to interview her because there's tons of stuff to talk about. Marilynn Hughes, thank you so much for being on the show.
Well, thanks for having me, Anthony.
Yeah, you're kind of amazing. I'm very impressed.
Well, thank you. That's very kind.
Let's start at the very beginning because it's the easiest way to start these kind of things. You're 9 years old. What happened that day or night? How did this experience happen?
Well, even from a young age, I was very, very, like kind of obsessed with God, So there was some things that kind of led to it in terms of like the way that I was thinking, the kind of inquiry that was going on even in my mind at the age of 9. I was also very interested in extraterrestrial life as a child, very young. But what ended up happening that particular night was, it would seem like just seemingly out of nowhere, but, just kind of prefacing it with that these interests were, in the forefront in my thinking, in my life. Although I was living in a family, being raised in a Mormon family, but a lot of the members of my family didn't even really have much of an interest in God. So I was kind of a little bit of an oddball. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but that constant thinking almost draws that stuff to you. So I understand.
It kind of can, yeah. And so, literally, just one night, near probably closer to morning, like around 4 a.m. or something like that. All of a sudden, I was just awakened by this rushing wind and this bellowing of the clouds before me, and it was just so powerful. I was just so blown away by what was happening. These bellowing clouds that were bluish, whitish, purplish in hue were then parting to reveal like this marble staircase which led up to the heavens, and on each side of the steps were these angels, these golden light. They just emanated all this light all the way up to the top. They just lined up. And at the top of the staircase were two thrones and two beings who I perceived at the time to be God the Father and God the Son were in those thrones. And what proceeded to happen was a lengthy experience where I was urged to come forward and come up the steps. And then I was shown like a vision within a vision, where I was shown how my life would proceed and that there would be difficulty, but that part of what my purpose was going to be involved. I remember being shown the cross, and there was this great fire burning it, and I was to put out the fire on the cross.
Wow.
But yet there was more to this, in that I understood that it had to do with this out-of-body experience. And there was more about it, because a lot of these experiences, it's not just what you see, it is what is downloaded into you as you experience it.
Right.
And so I understood that this fire that was burning the cross was all the misunderstandings that people have about God, all the misunderstandings that people have about the cross, about Christ, about religion, about everything. And of course, I'm 9 years old, so what that means at that time is very minimal, you know. And I was told that it would return to me later in time, and that this would be revealed to me at that time. And so then, and I was shown that there would be a lot of trials and tribulations and difficulty along the way. And there was, you know, even starting with that very morning when I returned back, and this was literally an earth-shattering experience. It was so powerful and mind-bending. I literally had the heavens had parted in my bedroom, and I had seen the heavens. And I went to speak to my mother, who, you know, told me to stop lying. And, you know, and so I realized very quickly that I was not going to be able to talk about this. Yes. And so thus it began, so to say, you know. But then when I was 22, it happened again, but this one was different, where suddenly I just had what would be a typical run-of-the-mill out-of-body experience, where I went into a vibrational state, and I tried to lift up my arms, and my light arms came out of my body, and I was like, well, And, you know, for even just a moment, I wondered, well, am I dying? Because, you know, something's weird's going on. And then I rolled out, bumped up on the ceiling, got kind of afraid, but I knew I was out of my body. Not sure if I'm physically, you know, if something physically is going on or not. And then it's a pretty short experience, and I go back. And then I'm, you know, praying for help, you know, for guidance and assistance. I'm like, okay, well, I was afraid that time. The next time I'd like it to be, I'd like to not be afraid.
That's nice. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, and so the next time it happens, I'm greeted by 3 spiritual guardians on each side, who are just these beautiful light beings who gently, very peacefully help me through the process. And then it just continues from there. You know, and so, as you can see from reading The Mysteries of the Redemption, a treatise on out-of-body travel and mysticism, it starts where you're seeing the experiences from what could be termed like the mechanics, you know, where you're learning how to move and see and hear, and then move through walls and windows and learn a little bit about the astral plane. But then you shortly move into, well, now we're moving through time. We're going back in time. We're going into past lifetimes. We're also then moving slowly. Very quickly, you're going to be moving into the passages, into the initiations, into the mysteries, the rites of passage. Later, you start moving into things called the alteration pathway. And then even further, you start learning about heaven, hell, and purgatory. You know, and so you learn about the heavens, and you see literally hundreds of visions of all these beautiful realms and spheres that reign in the heavenly realms. And then you're kind of brought back down again, where now you have to learn about some of the middle worlds and then some of the lower worlds. And you have to start learning about how the evolution works.
Which world are we in? Middle, lower, where? Or is that an unfair question?
No, that's a very fair question, and we are in a purgatorial world, which is in the middle. And so that's in the mystical frame of reference, that would be considered one of the mortal worlds. So the heavenly worlds are in the immortal spheres. We're in one of the mortal spheres. And then there are spheres below us that go into realms that are more to the dark and the evil type energies. And these are all different levels of evolution. And so we're a purgatory. And purgatory, for those who don't know, is a place of purification.
Yeah, I know it's better. A long time I looked around Earth and I said, this must be hell. I'm happy it's just purgatory. We have options.
Yes.
Now, there's just a side thing here. I want to continue your journey further, but I just want to ask a general question. Like,
sure.
I know a woman who, woke up in high school one night, got out of her bed, and then turned around and realized she was still in bed. And she had astral projected a few times, but never really did anything seriously with it. You're clearly on a capital M mission, and it's a wonderful one. But are there people that do this projection and just don't really do much with it, or just sort of something they do occasionally, in your understanding of how it works? I'm just wondering what you might know about that.
There are people who do that. And one of the purposes, I believe, of my own work is to try to harness the tool of out-of-body travel and show people that it actually has so much more potential to be utilized in the spiritual advancement of the soul. And that when people actually learn about what it actually can achieve and what they can actually really do with it, that they very easily often move into those evolutionary purposes. That's what I find. And when I was writing The Mysteries of the Redemption and Come to Wisdom's Door, the other book I sent you, I was told that people would have spontaneous experiences, some people, as they were reading these books, because it would kind of program them to be open to the experience.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
I've heard from a lot of people that is indeed the case. And this is what we're kind of doing, because, out-of-body travel is really a tool. It is a way that we are able to visit higher reality, higher realms, because, we're talking about not just one place, but an infinite number of places. And a lot of people will think of out-of-body travel or astral projection in terms of like the astral plane or just seeing their body on the bed, and they don't realize that's just literally the very, very, very tiniest tip of the iceberg. Mm-hmm. And that there is so much more, because we're talking about this truly infinite, multi-dimensional universe. And so we're starting out with, okay, that's where you begin. And then you begin moving through all of these other things. So some of them are your own history as a soul, which is past lifetimes. But then you move into realms of creation, where you explore things that have to do with your own personal destiny in this lifetime, whether that's creative, scientific, or whatever your own personal road of work will be in this lifetime. And then there's all these amazing spheres, and literally they're infinite. So it's, the realm of the golden angels, the 23rd dimension, the realms where we see how the Holy Mass on earth is reenacted, where the 54 steps of the Holy Mass occurs mystically between heaven and earth. The places where we see the circular prayer of the angels between earth and heaven, and how we can enter into that to create this spiritual link up between us and the heavenly spheres and the angelic realms. but it's also so much more. There's so many things that you're going to learn about. The white-winged horses, the crystal forests, the Assisi marauders.
Almost
so much.
Tongue in cheek, it almost sounds like a spiritual Disney World. It's like over here is Tomorrowland. Over here are the angels. So I had in the 70s. I took a form of Silva mind control by a guy who branched off from it. They taught us remote viewing, and it was funny. Our instructor at the time said, and again, a very limited view of astral travel. He said, "There's no reason to leave your body. You can just remotely view, and you don't have to leave your body." Which I suppose is true, but I'm just wondering if you... Again, he was very early. He didn't visit any dimensions. You've taken this to a whole nother level, which is fascinating to me. But do you have any comment on that? Like, don't leave your body, you don't have to? I mean, if you're not going to go on a spiritual journey, is it worth it or not?
Well, remote viewing and out-of-body travel are very different.
Okay.
And if you're interested in understanding the difference, I wrote a little book that explains that, and it's called, let's see, here's the title right here: Out-of-Body Travel, Astral Travel, and Remote Viewing: Definitions, Similarities, Differences, Spiritual Potential, and Related Hierarchies. And I trained as a remote viewer in part because everyone always said it was so similar, and I just assumed that it was. And when I trained as a remote viewer, I was like, well, wait a minute, these are very different modalities.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Yes, they are.
And so in terms of the actual, so first of all, I'd say they're very different modalities. And so just remote viewing something is a very different experience than having a mystical experience to a celestial sphere. So I would say I would disagree with that, but I would also disagree with it on a lot of other levels.
Okay.
And one of them is because when you have experiences out of the body, you're going into the realms of vibration. And this is not something that happens during remote viewing.
That makes sense,
and
sure.
Vibration is knowledge. And so what happens in the out-of-body travel experience is that you go through heightened levels of frequency. You're taken through vibrational raisings as you are learning to travel to higher and higher levels and higher realms. And so if you go to a high celestial sphere, you are literally vibrationally changed in order to reach it.
That makes sense.
Having gone there. And so it is a very different experience. I would disagree with that.
Okay, no, it makes sense.
There's a real purpose in having the experiences.
No, in the early 70s, I mean, for me, what I heard a lot from my various spiritual teachers at the time, and you talked about to the astral plane, they go, oh, it's dirty, it's messy up there, you don't want to be in the astral plane, you'll pick up, not evil, but, shit, stuff that needs to be avoided, which, that was the 70s, and it's clear that you're opening up so much more in your own experiences. Because, at the time, it seemed like, to me, astral travel was more like a toy than anything, I don't want to say useful, because I'm sure it could be useful, but as deeply spiritual and profound as you have used it as you've gone along. It's 8:30, so at that note, I'm going to, unless you have something, do you want to say something before I go to commercials?
Nope.
Okay, we're cool. Okay, everybody, we got another 60 minutes with Marilynn, and we've just touched the surface. I do want to remind you, outofbodytravel.org. Believe me, this is a hell of a website. It's there's books listed, there's classes, there's teachers. It's worth just strolling around there and finding out what Marilynn is up to. But in the meanwhile, we're going to have a little bit of news and commercials and be back in about 5 minutes. So here we go.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant, and on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, Thursdays 12 noon on talkradio.nyc.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Jack Speer. As Secretary of State Antony Blinken has arrived in the Mideast, the UN Security Council assembled today to discuss the recent airstrikes carried out by U.S. forces against Iran-backed militias. The U.S. has hit targets in Iraq, Syria, and Yemen. The strikes in response to a deadly drone strike in Jordan that claimed the lives of 3 U.S. Army reservists. Yours, Greg Myrie, has more.
The message the U.S. is trying to send is that it will use serious firepower in an attempt to make these attacks stop. It's not necessarily how the message will be received at the end, especially by Iran. But so far, the groups in Iraq and Syria have not launched any new rounds of attack. The Houthis were apparently planning to fire some missiles, and the U.S. struck at them again on Sunday. I think there's a bit of a wait and see right now if these groups will continue with these attacks.
Still, Iran's militant allies in the region have shown little sign of being deterred by the U.S. strikes so far. President Biden is urging congressional Republicans to get behind a bipartisan border deal brokered in the Senate recently. During a visit in Las Vegas today, the president said he's been urging lawmakers to address the U.S. southern border since he got into office. Yours, Ashley Lopez, has more.
Biden notes that the bipartisan deal would not impede legal entry into the country, but instead would address problems that Republicans have been bringing up for years now.
We don't have enough agents. We don't have enough folks. We don't have enough judges. We don't have enough folks there. We need help. Why won't they give me the help all this time? And now they're starting about the border. It's out of control. Well, guess what? Everything in that bipartisan bill gives me control, gives us control.
The president says he's disappointed that the deal does not include protections for people brought into the country as children, often referred to as dreamers. That and other enforcement provisions have drawn criticism from the left. Ashley Lopez, NPR News.
Supreme Court later this week is slated to hear arguments over whether Donald Trump can remain on the ballot in Colorado. That's after the state's highest court ruled Trump violated a constitutional provision that says those who engaged in insurrection should not be able to run for office. California is getting pummeled by the second major winter storm in a week. NPR's Michael Copley has more.
California didn't have time to dry out before heavy rain and wind started pounding the state yet again. The storm is the result of an atmospheric river. It's a band of water vapor in the sky that can dump huge amounts of rain and snow. They're natural phenomena that deliver most of the precipitation western states need for crops and drinking water. But when they come in rapid succession, they can inflict huge economic costs. That's because areas that are already soaked are more likely to experience severe flooding and debris flows. Research published this year found expected losses are more than 3 times greater when an atmospheric river is part of a sequence of storms. Climate change is expected to make these kinds of storm systems even more intense.
This is NPR. Officials with the Justice Department say First National Bank discriminated against Black and Latino home buyers in North Carolina for at least a 4-year period. The $13.5 million fine levied by officials just the latest settlement involving a list of banks that engaged in a practice known as redlining. Justice Department officials say the bulk of the money will go towards funding subsidized loans for Black and Latino borrowers in Charlotte and Winston-Salem, 2 housing markets where officials found the bank had discriminated against individuals seeking home loans. The parent company of Snapchat says it's cutting 500 employees, which is roughly 10% of its staff. As NPR's Bobby Allen reports, it comes as Silicon Valley conducts a fresh round of layoffs.
Snapchat, like most social media apps, makes nearly all of its money from digital advertising, and there's been a substantial pullback in digital advertising spending in recent months. In a regulatory filing, the messaging app's parent company, Snap, told investors it is laying off 500 employees. It's the latest example of the tech industry contracting this year. Microsoft, Google, Amazon, and others have slashed staff. In all, more than 30,000 tech workers have lost their jobs so far in 2024. Analysts say while digital advertising has been in a rough patch, many of the cuts are aimed at satisfying investors who are demanding leaner companies and higher profits. The company will report quarterly earnings on Tuesday. Bobby Allen, NPR News.
Crude oil futures prices moved higher amid a ratcheting up of Mideast tensions. Ongoing and U.S. retaliation against Iranian-backed militias has heightened fears of possible supply problems. Oil was up 50 cents a barrel to $72.78 a barrel. I'm Jack Speer, NPR News in Washington.
Hey, it's me, your cell phone. We need to talk about something serious. I know you love me. I know you like using me wherever you are. But I feel like this isn't working out when you're driving. I know you may think that it's possible to focus both on me and the road, but I just don't feel the same way. I think we should spend time away from each other when you're driving. It's for the best.
Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. A message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, and the Ad Council.
And hello, everybody, and welcome back to Cosmic Tuesdays. It is Monday, February 5th, and my guest tonight is Marilynn Hughes. We're going to be discussing out-of-body travel and much else, but the next few weeks. Last week we had a problem, but our guest will be back this week. Ray Catania is a visionary metaphysical teacher. He'll be in with us on February 12th. And where's my list? Oh, God. Okay. Next up, we don't have anything specifically scheduled, but they're all settling in. Kyron O'Keefe has written a book commenting on her interpretation and understanding and experiences of the Seth material. She'll be joining us in the next few weeks. Mark Seltman, an extraordinary palmist and hand reader, will be back. He's been with us a few years ago. Ann Archer came in from last year. We had her after the Extraordinary Spiritual Experiences Conference, which was sort of an NDE conference with a new name because they're trying to use the term spiritual experience as opposed to near death. Brad Johnson is a psychic that will be joining us. A man named Gaston Oulet has written a book, and he will be with us too down the road. Right now, the only three locked in. Two locked-ins. Next week is Ray Catania, and then later on February 12th, we'll be having Deborah Tatel, who's been on the show before. She is a psychic healer out of Chicago. Tonight we have the pleasure of talking to Marilynn Hughes, who has written an extraordinary number of books. She's probably one of our masters of out-of-body travel in terms of the experts to go to. So, welcome back, Marilynn.
Thank you.
So, just to briefly... The book, Mysteries... hold on a second, I have it the title here somewhere.
The Mysteries of the Redemption?
Yeah. It seems as if a lot of it has been... You're in the book, you list like a out-of-body experience, and then you often tie in a quote from a spiritual book of some kind and stuff like that. What made you pursue that particular format? Was there something, instead of just sort of listing things, or did you have any idea why you did what you did? And I don't mean that insulting. Sometimes we just don't know why. Go ahead.
Right, yeah. Well, in my case, most of my books, I was given the title in Out-of-Body Experience, and I was given the exact way to do it in Out-of-Body Experience, and this as well. And I actually appreciate you bringing that up, because there was a real rhyme and reason to that, which was that each experience was, given in sequential order of how it occurred. And then quotes were provided from this library that I've, put together over the last 30, 40 years now of ancient sacred texts from all the world religions. I've got, it's from everything, minor and
yes,
world religion.
I'm astounded at the number of references you make. Go ahead.
And part of the purpose of it is to show people, first of all, that out-of-body travel is not, first of all, just a modern phenomenon, but that it is riddled throughout the ancient sacred texts and throughout every culture and religious text in the world, but also to show how this universality of religious experience and how people have had these types of experiences throughout time and history. And so we think, oh, this is new, and it's like, no, it's as old as time, and we are tying it together. I had these beautiful experiences later where I was shown the prophets, saints, mystics, sages, and ascetics, and they all would come to me in this big group, and I was shown how it was like, this is a work, not just, the Mysteries of the Redemption, but the whole work of the foundation, bringing all these books, doing this type of work. This is a work that has been in the making for thousands of years, which is literally taking the experiences of these thousands of messengers of God that have been spoken to for thousands of years from every corner of the world, whose writings and these wonderful golden keys that they have left behind when they were literally finishing up their work here on earth, because they were ascending this realm, right? And so these golden keys that are left behind, and they're scattered all over the world, and we don't necessarily realize that they go together as this beautiful unit, the ancient sacred texts And that's what I was trying to do, and that's what I was shown repeatedly. Bring those together and show that they all belong together.
No, it's true. There's a very ecumenical quality to the book where you realize like these religions or these beliefs aren't as far apart from each other as you think. And actually there was one paragraph from your book that I really felt was worth quoting from sort of the beginning. In the ancient mysteries you will find many references to spiritual beings who come in the form of mythical gods of the ancient Greeks, Egyptians, etc. It is important to know that these beings are not gods, but rather one, people who used to walk the earth but now serve God by guarding a particular mystery or rite of passage, or two, spirits who have always guardianed particular mysteries or rites of passage whom ancient peoples became aware of through visions and mistranslated them as gods due to their own perceptions that any spiritual beings were indeed such. It is not my intention to portray any of these spiritual beings as any more than angelic hosts, spiritual guides, guardians of particular rites, mysteries, or realms, who serve God in their own unique fashions. God is one, and there is only one God. I just thought it was a wonderful comment because we assign so many identities to those of us that have visions that clearly could be quite off the beam. So
I appreciate you pointing that out. I think that's
it's an important quote. I think, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, it's an important point to be made that the misperceptions that have fallen to us throughout time and history as well have been part of the misunderstandings that have also arisen, you know. And so part of bringing these ancient sacred texts together and then also bringing them together in the light of even near-death experiences and what they're calling them now extraordinary experiences is a way to show that these experiences were never foreign to us as human beings. They belong to us in our very DNA. They're part of our soul. These things are not something that only me or only these particular special people can have. And
right.
That's ironically part of the purpose of the Out of Body Travel Foundation, which is to show people that this spiritual journey is for all of us. And so for those who can and have the opportunity to have the out-of-body experiences, it is out there for them. And for those who may never have the experience, these windows that are provided to us by my experiences and the experience of these thousands of other souls are a way for us to get to know God, because that's how we get to know people, is by knowing their friends. And God is presented to us in this beautiful faceted diamond, and each of these facets is one of these ways in which God revealed himself to each of these people throughout time and history. And, you know, whether they were a prophet, saint, mystic, saint, ascetic, or sage in the wilderness, they each received one of these different views of God. And one of the things that we see when we go to these ancient texts is that there are so many ways to view him. We have to remember that there is no one direction when you're talking about God. And so the more that you are willing to hear these many experiences of God, the more you will get to know him.
It's funny, it almost reminds me of that sort of famous story of the 5 blind men examining an elephant. You know, one touches the trunk, one touches the tail, one touches the side, and one of them says, "Oh, the elephant is like a snake," because he's holding the trunk, and none of them agree on what an elephant is when they're only feeling part of an elephant, which certainly ties in with what you're talking about. People's various interpretations of what God is, you know, and to their experiences.
What you learn in the out-of-body experiences, and the more and more you travel out of body and mystically, is just how beyond any of our comprehension or ability to know physically he is. And the you know, just even the idea that we could really even encompass that in our physical mind is almost a ridiculous notion. You know, when you go out of your body, when you have a full-blown near-death experience and you are removed from the encasement of our flesh and you experience that unlimited being for a long enough period of time, you realize it's not even possible for us to know that. And so we have to then be willing to kind of surrender and know the parts that he reveals to us in whatever way they are revealed. We have to have the humility to understand that we are the creature, we are the creation, and he is God, and therefore we allow him to reveal to us rather than we reveal to him who he is. You know?
No, I understand what you're saying, and actually a lot of times the people who have traveled further, I'm not specifically referring to you, have talked about how they understood things over there that they couldn't even explain when they got back. It's like their soul understood it, but you get back here and it's like, well, I'm paying my rent right now. What did he want to tell me? You know, kind of thing. Now I'm curious. Now, you have said you had an NDE, and I'm wondering, did that happen before or after your 19-year-old experience when you were revisited? It was 22 when you were revisited. Where did the NDE fall chronologically, and how did that connect with your out-of-body stuff?
The NDE fell in after I was about 38 years old.
Okay.
And that was then after the Mysteries of the Redemption, about 2 years after the Mysteries of the Redemption was released.
Okay.
And so, yeah, so it was right about there chronologically.
How was it different or not different? Did you connect it with your out-of-body experiences? How do you put them together?
It was astonishingly beautiful. I mean, what happened was, to simplify and make a long story short, I had been diagnosed with heart failure and cardiomyopathy, and I was being considered for the possibility of being typed out for a heart transplant at that time. And I was a couple of days before I was supposed to go in for a cardiac catheterization where they were going to have a chopper standing by, and I lived in a small mountain town, and they were going to have the chopper standing by to fly me up to Denver so that I would be able to go up there and be able to wait for a transplant or something. And about 2 weeks prior, they had done some other type of test which had shown my heart function was significantly reducing and that it was time to consider this. And so I think it was the night before I went into something went wrong, and I was expelled from my body. It might have been an arrhythmia type thing that can happen. And I was shooting through space towards the tunnel. And there's the tunnel with the light at the end, which is also associated with the time tunnel. It's a similar tunnel that you will travel. There's different corridors in the out-of-body travel experiences.
Okay.
So you have different corridors that you travel when you're going through initiations into the mysteries, and different corridors that you travel when you're going backwards in time through lifetimes, and different corridors through into the star tunnels and into the heavenly spheres. And so there's all these different corridors. This is the one that is mostly associated with travel through time, but it's also the one that's associated with near-death experiences. So I come to this tunnel, and I'm going to the end of the tunnel. And at the end of the tunnel, my little dog, my childhood dog that I had, who died at about 24 years of age, was sitting there waiting for me beyond the light.
Wow.
One of the little rules in the mystical is that if you go beyond certain thresholds, you cannot return.
Yeah, I
And so
understand that. Yeah.
Yeah, I knew that if I crossed past this light, the barrier, that I would not be able to return. So I was like, okay, I can't do that. And so I was really excited to see my little dog.
Don't pet the dog. You won't be coming back. Okay.
Yeah.
That's a tough one. I mean, I don't mean to make fun of it, but that's tough.
It was tough. Yes, it was. And so what ends up happening is the Lord Jesus appears. He's wearing the robes of the Sacred Heart, the red and the white. And he's majestic and he's amazing. And he says he's going to make an exception and he's going to take me on a tour of the heavens. And he's going to let me go beyond what I would normally be allowed to do.
Wow.
And he's just going to let me do that. And so he takes me on this amazing tour, and I go through all these beautiful heavenly spheres, and the colors are so amazing. It's so beautiful, and the flying through all these beautiful places, and it's just spectacular. And then he brings me back to this place, and he shows me this it's like something that measures selfishness, basically.
Okay.
And I can hear from the earth, because I can see the earth in the distance, as if it's almost like we're space travelers, but we're not.
Okay.
You can see the earth from where we are in the distance, and I can hear from the earth the screaming and the complaining of the people.
Oh boy.
It's the selfishness of the people is what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
And he shows me where the average soul on earth is at, and the little bar is down at the bottom on the level of selfishness.
Of course it is. Go ahead.
And then he says, "You want to see where you're at?" And I said, "Okay," kind of trepidatious, And he shows me that I had made a lot of progress, and it was up there high enough. And he said that I had completed what I had to complete, and that I could go if I wanted to. But that I also had the choice that I could go back, but that if I did, nothing would change. The world would remain the same. It would be the same. People would be selfish. It would be the same types of difficulties. It would not get any easier. It would be the same kind of world. And I said, well, at the time I had 3 little kids. One of them was pretty much 2 years old. I said, well, okay. And we're looking, and I'm thinking, and I'm standing in front of him, and he's like, so pretty much, what are you going to do? And I said, well, as long as it's my choice, I'm going to go back because I have to, because of my kids. And he said, okay, then I need you to go back, and I need you to pray for a heart transplant. And then I thought about it a minute, and I said, well, no, I can't do that. And he just was quiet, and he looked and was waiting, and I said, but I will go back, and I will pray that the perfectly healthy person who would have to die to provide me with a heart would be spared, and I'll take my chances with the heart I've got. And he pauses for a moment, and he says, I grant that. And then he takes my hands, and we start shooting through space, and we're moving towards the earth. And we move into, it's like a way station between earth and where we were. Okay. Close to the heavens. And it's like we go into what is like, it's almost like a little coffee shop bookstore now. And I'm sitting there at a table with Jesus,
Coffee with Jesus, what the heck? Go ahead.
It's cool, And he's pointing at these bookshelves, and I'm looking, I'm kind of confused, and he says, those are yours. And I'm like confused, I'm looking, and I noticed that my name is up there like as the author, and I'm like, wait, what? Because there's a lot of them, you know what I mean? And so I'm starting to get nervous and a little bit overwhelmed, because I'm like, wait a minute, what do you mean? You mean you want me to write that? And he basically just kind of reiterates that thought, which is those are the ones he says, let me put it in the right order. He says, I'm not going to heal you, but I am going to help you, and I am going to make good use of you in the time you have left. And then
that's an interesting statement. Go ahead.
Yeah. And so there's all these books on the shelves. There's tons of books, which, now are right behind me. You know what I mean? I didn't even realize it until probably a couple years after I had written a whole bunch of these. It was like, oh my gosh, those are the ones that were in that bookstore. But so I ended up going back. I wake up, and we have to go to the hospital to go do this procedure. I go in, get the procedure done. I'm supposed to be, flying off on the chopper, but I wake up in the same hospital. And I ask my cardiologist, I'm like, well, what's going on?
Yeah.
He's like, well, we can't really explain it, but for some reason, your heart's just doing a lot better.
Gee, for some reason, golly.
I have to send you up there. And I was like, okay. And I immediately knew, but I didn't say, I didn't want to have the discussion.
No.
I was like, thank you. But it was like, okay, we're not going to have that, argument or discussion because, and so there was that. And then literally after that, it was like a cyclone hit me. I was just like with my fingers just going constantly. The books would just hit me. It was like download. And, all these things. And it didn't even really occur to me as it was happening. It only occurred to me later, for instance, there's a series of books I wrote called the Mystic Knowledge series. And I think it was a couple years after I'd written those books, and I saw them on my shelf, and I was like, wait a minute, those are the books. I remember seeing those on that shelf. But when I was writing them, it didn't really register that I was writing all the books that I had seen in that little Way Cafe station. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Have you, close to commercial, but I just want to ask this one question. Have you ever, the words are tough here, have you ever been unwillingly into an out-of-body experience? Like you're like, I'm not in the mood for it, but suddenly they pull you out for some reason to say something to you? And what would that level be? Again, I'm just asking you. Hard for me to even ask questions because I don't always understand exactly what you're perceiving. But so what happens when you're involuntarily pulled out, so to speak?
It's usually when there's something, and most of the time, it's not unwillingly because, if you're going to have an unwilling kind of energy, it's going to be similar to the fear or the shock or any of those kinds of things which have a tendency to shoot you right back into your body,
right?
Which I talk about and Come to Wisdom's Door, which is kind of a block or a hindrance. But sometimes it will happen, and it will be, I'll give you two scenarios. One is when you're being instructed about something that you really need to be instructed about, and other times it can be when you're dealing with spiritual warfare, and it can be demonic attack. So there you go. Nice little cliffhanger for after the break.
Cliffhanger attacks. Great. Okay, we'll be back in just a couple of minutes because it won't be that long. And then we'll finish up another 30 minutes with Marilynn Hughes and all of her out-of-body experiences. And I'm stalling while here we go.
My name is Tom Thornton.
And my name is Cindy Thornton. We're retired, and this is how we live united.
We decided to volunteer with United Way at our community free health clinic.
United Way is how we contribute, because we know our time and money are going to the right places.
Judging by the thank yous we get at the clinic, I'd say we're doing the right thing with our retirement, too. We're Tom and Cindy Thornton. We volunteer at our community free health clinic. We don't just wear the shirt.
We live it.
Give, advocate, volunteer, live united. Go to liveunited.org. Brought to you by United Way and the Ad Council.
New York City, 1962. Daniel Seeger says he's a conscientious objector. His local draft board says he's not. Conscientious objection requires a belief in a supreme being, and Daniel will not affirm or deny the existence of a God. He says he has a religious faith and a purely ethical creed. The board has no idea what he's talking about. Seeger is convicted of refusing induction into the armed services. In 1965, the U.S. Supreme Court reverses that conviction. Local boards and courts, writes Justice Tom Clark, are not free to reject beliefs because they consider them incomprehensible. Over 250 sects inhabit our land. Some believe in a purely personal God, some in a supernatural deity. Others think of religion as a way of life, envisioning as its ultimate goal the day when all men can live together in perfect understanding and peace. These are Your Constitutional Rights, a project of Yellowstone Public Radio and Montana's American Civil Liberties Union at aclumontana.org.
And the Ad Council. Your blood pressure numbers could change your life. Talk to your doctor about creating a plan that works better for you. Start taking the right steps at manageyourbp.org. Brought to you by the American Heart Association, American Medical Association, and the Ad Council.
And welcome back to Cosmic Tuesdays. It is February 5th, and I just briefly want to mention one of my favorite bookstores on Earth. Well, I haven't been to any bookstores off Earth, but the Quest Bookshop is on East 53rd Street in New York City between 2nd and 3rd Avenue. And they have whatever you wish to get spiritually. They are in the building of the New York Theosophical Society, so they will never lose their lease. And you have all the books you could possibly find. They have crystals, they have incense, they have all kinds of stuff. They have tarot decks, astrology books, you name it, they got it. They even, I think, recently got in a shipment of Tibetan singing bowls. So if you want to check them out, they're definitely worth visiting. I've been there quite frequently myself. That's at 230 East 53rd Street. And also, hey, if you're not in New York City, Quest Bookshop NYC.com is where you can find the details and perhaps order something online if you haven't got anything particularly you want to ask. So keep us going, Marilynn. What's the continuation to the story?
Oh, so well, so this is when and I actually hear from a lot of people about these types of experiences, because this is when people find themselves really needing guidance, is when they start having these unwilling experiences where they are experiencing spiritual warfare, and they can't speak, they can't move, and they are under demonic attack. And this is something that is, part and parcel of the spiritual life, which we all have to kind of deal with somewhere along the way. And so, yes, this is part of it. In the Mysteries of the Redemption, we lay out what I call the path of purification, but then we also go into the path of discrimination and discipline, which explains why this happens. Because as the soul is going through this purification process and working its way towards, letting go of the hindrances, the fetters, and the karmic stains, the sins, defilements, the things that have been holding that soul back for not just this lifetime, but usually many, many, many lifetimes, then what's happening is those elements and those forces that have had a hold on that soul are going to fight to keep that soul. And so the spiritual warfare will then begin. And that's when the soul goes into this period where there is this going back and forth, the fighting between the forces of good and evil. It's a very common part of the process, and we have a lot of resources on learning about that. We do have, at our website, outofbodytravel.org, you can click on the YouTube channel. We have about 9 films and a whole bunch of classes, and among them we have one that's called The Grand Phases of the Soul, which really outlines this path of purification that is described and taught in the Mysteries of the Redemption. But we also have some classes now on and films on spiritual warfare, both preparation and the combat, which is definitely helpful for souls experiencing that.
I also want to mention there's also a video on your website called 100 Questions About Out-of-Body Travel. That's probably a good introduction for anybody curious about it. But God, there's tons of stuff. And I don't want to get into this in depth, but I do want to mention a few other things. You've had books that don't necessarily relate to this exactly. You had some books regarding Michael Jackson, sort of the Afterlife Journal of Michael Jackson. I don't want to get into details, but you said there was a whole different experience going on here.
That was a very interesting experience because, it was totally different than everything else that I've done, except for the fact that I do work with souls that are coming into the realm and souls that are going. So souls that are being birthed and souls that are passing over and going into the heavens, hells, and the purgatories. One of the things that you'll see throughout the Mysteries of the Redemption, and as you continue reading it, Anthony, is that it goes into the work that I'm drawn into later, where I work with souls who are in purgatories and help them to purify of elements holding them there, but also souls who are in hell realms. And so the moment a soul is ready to go higher and they call out to God for help, help is sent. And so some of us are among that type of force of help. We're all called to different things.
So ultimately, it's up to us. I know God is helping us, but it's like we have to ask.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I see that. Go ahead.
Well said. So well said. Yes, we have to ask. And what I find this to be such an important point, because I think we miss the point of it so much, is the merciful nature of God. And no matter how you view God, whether you view God as a deity or as universal being, when you experience, because it's both, it's both and much, much more.
Yeah.
When you're in the out-of-body travel state, when you experience this, and this reminds me of another amazing experience I had in the throne room of God, but I digress. But
okay.
But when you experience this, which is that the moment a soul asks for help, and you feel that rush of wind, that movement of the entire universal cosmos to its aid, then you understand what mercy means. And it's like you really understand how God loves all his creation. And that response is not limited to souls who are in the upper atmospheres.
Okay.
It's also given to souls who are in the lower realms, who are struggling through some of the darkness and the evil. And it's just astonishing to me, because I don't think we really contemplate that enough to realize, because it's instant. It's instant. And so think about that. Take that to meditation sometime, because that's just amazing. But so in terms of the Michael Jackson question, so part of my purpose has been to work with souls in purgatory, work with souls who are crossing over and the afterlife experiences. But in 2009, when he passed, the night of his passing, he came to me, asked me to chronicle his after-death and after death journey. And at first, one of the funny things I share is the very first response I had to him was, no.
Okay. The heck with this. I got things to do. Yeah.
We're going to do that. And I was like, but I will pray about it. And if Jesus himself tells me to do this, if there's purpose in it, I will. And then I did have a subsequent experience where I was told there was purpose. And it turned into a trilogy of books. And he came to me for that following year, and it ended the year, the day of the anniversary, the final
of his death.
year. Yeah. Yes, and so it turned into a very beautiful experience. And as I mentioned to you before, what a lot of people are surprised by is that I think the biggest thing I tell people is that this is every man's afterlife journey. They think that it's going to be some kind of unusual thing. Michael Jackson was a human being.
Yeah.
And most of our afterlife experiences, just like our life experiences, carry a similarity to one another, much more than a dissimilarity. And there were a lot of beautiful experiences that I shared with him and got to see and witness and go through. And that were just really awesome, and it was a really beautiful experience. But it was unique in that that was the one time that I was told to write something down like that for a long period of time. I have had other experiences with other souls where I followed them for a period of time, sometimes a year, 2 or 3 years.
What does follow mean?
Death. It would mean after their death that I would continue to see them and help them in their after death journey for a period of 1 year to 3 years. But then at the same time, not necessarily catalog it or log the whole thing in terms of writing a book about it. It would just be private and something I would do, And so that was unique and in that regard.
Well, I do want to mention, again, going back to your website, you give spiritual counseling. So people want to talk to you. There's you can arrange an appointment with her. And the other question, and there's lots of stuff. Actually, there's a foundation, a charitable foundation connected with out of body travel and other stuff. So it's worth checking out. There's teachings that you can learn there. Tons of books. Amazon.com has everything she wants, but also, if I remember correctly before the show, you said a lot of this stuff, or all of it, could be downloaded for free. Would you elaborate on that?
Yes. Yes, it's all downloadable for free. You can get Mysteries of the Redemption, Come to Wisdom's Door, Galactica, right at the primary website at outofbodytravel.org. But the rest of the books are available and is linked at the main website, right in the footer of the site.
The travel website, okay, yeah.
Yeah, and it tells you to go to the archive, which is outofbodytravel.wordpress.com, and it'll take you there, and there is where you can download every single book.
Wow.
All the movies, everything, and of course at YouTube or rumble.com you can watch all the films, all of our classes, all of our videos, all of my interviews and stuff from the very beginning in 1992. You can watch all of those, but there's also a course of study, a free course of study that you can follow on the WordPress site that a lot of people enjoy as well.
It's pretty wild. To do all this work and to offer it for free is a very... I think it makes sense, but that's me. I'm not a capitalist in that way, but I'm glad it's available for everyone. Just some side comments in general. Is reincarnation... You believe in reincarnation? You accept it as fact?
Yes, and what's interesting about that is that it was not something that I had even thought about and did not believe in before the experiences started happening to me. And so, yes, it's because of the experiences I've had that I have come to that conclusion.
It's... Would you say you chose before you were born to be this person now and doing all this work? Would you say this was like, this time around this is going to be my assignment? Do you have any insight in that?
That's what I've been shown. I was shown that I was actually shown early on the books that I've written were written before I was born for me to come in and to do this.
I've heard stuff like that. Yeah, go ahead. Keep going.
Yeah, and so I do think that was probably the case, and I think it's interesting because you can always go back to like, well, that's interesting in the sense that then I was given the option to leave before really doing the mission any further. After that time, I had released the primary text, but then I think that we have many options along the way as to, okay, well, are you going to take it this deep or that deep? How far are you going to take it? And so I do believe that that was the case. And part of it comes back to something I was also taught a lot about, which is that we are always encouraged to give back to creation that which creation gives to us.
Sure.
And so as I'm continually receiving all of this from the universe and from all of these teachers that have taught me in the out-of-body travel state all these years, I also have to give that back. And, I do that even in the out-of-body travel state by working with souls in the purgatories and the lower realms and different types of things. But I also do it by doing this. And so we all have our different ways that we are tasked to give things back, so like in your case, it's your astrology and it's your podcast. We all have these different avenues that we are given to give back to creation.
That's interesting, actually. When I learned astrology this time around, I was told I was remembering astrology. I wasn't learning
That
it.
makes sense.
Yeah, so it was like, I learned that several centuries ago. I don't do that again. No, so I definitely understand that. And actually, I've had quite a number of NDE people, and God, my brain is short-circuiting, but he's a reverend now, but he said he's had 2 of them, and he didn't want to go back after the second one. Because he said
nobody does. I didn't want to go back either, but...
Yeah. It's definitely an issue, yeah. Now, you also do is hypnotism and remote viewing just a skill of yours, or it's something you embody and bring into your practice? And can you hypnotize somebody into leaving their body? Go ahead.
Definitely, you can utilize that to help them to kind of move into the consciousness of it. But,
sure.
I don't do it for that purpose.
I didn't mean to imply you did. I'm just asking. Go ahead.
Oh, but for a while I was doing remote viewing more professionally, and then I stopped doing that because this is just more of my calling. And the hypnotherapy, I use it with my spiritual counseling clients when necessary or when helpful. And but generally, the hypnotherapy I will utilize the most when people, when it seems like we need to touch into like a past lifetime, things like that, where they're having issues like that are related to that. And so that's what I'll use it for the most. So yeah, I'd say it's more of a skill.
No, I can understand that. Hypnotism is pretty fascinating on the way those things work out. You also do, what I want to mention right off the bat, people, is I did say that this book was 435 pages, but I want to add there's pages and pages of paintings, and there's also links to all the music you've created. You've got 18 CDs. What do you play? When did you start? Tell me a little more about that.
Well, the paintings are of things that I've seen in the out-of-body travel state, and as you can tell, I have a very unique style. Painting is obviously not my first calling. Mm-hmm. And then the music, it's also music that I heard when I was in the out-of-body travel state is, there's the Out-of-Body Travel Foundation hymnal, which I call it, which is the music that I heard in the out-of-body travel state. And then I wrote it down. And, I learned how to play a lot of musical instruments when I was younger. And I recorded these things in my garage, played them on guitar, piano, and various little things, and did the vocals. And that's what those are. And then, I was a cantor in the Catholic Church for many years. And so I did a lot of liturgical music that I kind of mysticalized. Another of the CDs is something called The Frequency of Otara, which is something that was given to me by the angels to try to imitate the vibrational raisings that you are given as you start having out-of-body experiences. And what it does is it takes you through these vibrational raisings through the octaves. You go through 1 octave, 2 octaves, another octave, and another octave, probably up to about 4 or 5 octaves, which is how it happens in the mystical state, in the out-of-body travel state. You'll be taken up these octaves, and it's like revving of an engine. So it'll go up and then down and then up and then down. It'll go repetitively, and they're bringing up your vibration. And a lot of people have reported that it helps them to then eventually have out-of-body experiences.
Now, 2 questions about out-of-body. One, so you just like lie in a chair or your bed and your body just hangs till you come back, right? Would that be a way of putting it?
Yeah, but I definitely would say my recommendation is that you lie on the floor or in a bed, because it's going to work better for you.
Okay.
Because if you're sitting or whatever, if you're want your body in a position where you can leave your body and it won't fall over, because if it does, you're going to wake up. You're going to get pulled.
Well,
right
yeah,
back.
I wouldn't want to fall over while I'm in my body.
Yeah. 'Cause, yeah, you have to think about those kinds of things. Yeah.
And you've done a tremendous amount of out of body travel.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Would you care to offer a rough idea of a percentage, or how much time you actually spend out of your, like, what's the longest you've been out of your body? What's, can you give me just some facts and figures maybe about what that means?
Well, I mean, I'll give you some facts and figures about what it means for everybody, for starters, and then I'll talk. First of all, most people are spending time out of their body at night when they're sleeping.
When we sleep, yes, that's a given. Yeah,
they're not conscious of it. And so what's happening that's different with people who become truly conscious out-of-body travelers is that they are becoming truly, completely conscious of it. And so it's not really changing the amount of time you're spending out of your body. It may change, it will change the quantity and the quality, because you're going to actually progress to higher and higher spheres of travel. So that will change. The fact that you're conscious of it changes how that impacts you in your physical waking life.
Yeah.
So you can look at, well, what do we spend, roughly, 8 hours out of 24. So it could be 33% for an average person. And for a person like me, I wouldn't say that I'm spending that now, but I've gone through periods where it is 33% of my time, and then I'll go through periods where it's less of that time, because it does wax and wane. So there are periods where it's really active, and then times where it's less active, and then it'll rev back up and it's active again, and it's just all the time. So it can be variable,
Now, I have noticed over the years, as I interview people, a lot of people with gifts come from families that have gifts. Now, I know you said early on that you really couldn't tell your mother thought you were nuts when you talked to her. Are there any relatives you know of or aware of that have a gift, or that not that you've become aware of?
That's interesting, and that's a very good point. And interestingly, in my family, no. And so, very interesting that, no, not in my family.
No, it's just my grandmother, my mother's mother, had an NDE in like 1875 or something, or 1885. And my mother had a psychic streak, and to a certain degree, I'm not a professional, but I had that streak too. So I do see it often. Either people become psychic because they're connected, or sometimes traumatic experiences release it, when it comes out. And I had one woman on the show who died and came back, and that's when she became psychic, because, so it's kind of fascinating to see.
That's common too. Near-death experiences will bring back, they'll bring back either psychic gifts, or they'll have the ability to see angels, or they'll have the ability to see demons. I've heard of both, and or both. Some will see both. So that is true. People with near-death experiences will come back with different gifts. So that's very true.
And it's true. I've had a lot of NDE people who talk about how so much stuff, they didn't see things the way they had before, is the best way to put it. Another question I want to ask, though, is have you ever astral out-of-bodied with someone else? Like, met a person that you knew was like, oh, they're an earthling, they're not like a spirit, if that's the right term. Have you met people?
Yes, that is true. I don't do it often, but actually I do hear from a lot of readers who tell me that they meet with me, and that I give them guidance and direction, or take them places. And I've explained to them that because of the fact that if I were to remember all of that, my brain would be too overwhelmed.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I don't usually remember it, but I do have lots of things that I do that I remember with people I know, or people that I'm actually working with, that I'm conscious of. And I do have, experiences sometimes with the deceased, sometimes that I'm communicating with, or just with others. Yes, that does happen. It's not the most common thing, because most of the time The out-of-body experience is a fairly solitary one because you're being taken on a specific spiritual teaching.
It's not like a vacation trip, I understand.
Yeah. Even though it is kind of vacation-y because
Yes.
it's awesome, but it is very there is a lot of teaching involved that's specific to you.
Have your nighttime sleep dreams changed or evolved since you started doing this more and more? Because you talk about when we're dreaming, we leave our bodies.
You definitely have. You have definitely more lucid dreaming and also more of what I call spiritual dreams, where you have dreams where it's obvious that you are being instructed spiritually.
Yes, I've had them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I even remember when I was studying astrology, waking up in the middle of the night and I'd be aware like somebody's teaching me something. Like I didn't see them, but they were like chalkboards in front of me with planets on them and stuff, and I'm like, so no, I understand that. Sometimes you're sleeping, sometimes you're dreaming, sometimes you're not, sometimes you're busy,
Yeah.
So no, it makes perfect sense. So we're about 3 minutes to the end of the show. I would like to propose you and I should pick a particular topic. And then you come back in a couple of months. The reason I mentioned that to the audience is that I could go on 1,000 different trips with Marilynn based on everything that she's created. And this show is really to show you this is what this woman has done, and it's worth checking out. But I would like to definitely maybe pick a topic or two down the road and come back on, and we just kind of zero in on that and kind of get, and maybe I'll finish the book by then.
Oh, cool.
Which
yeah,
I get weird.
do that. Yeah.
Okay,
that sounds great.
You can reach her at outofbodytravel.org. And there's also, if you go to outofbodytravel.org, there are links to her YouTube page, her Facebook page, her Rumble page, and yada, yada, yada. There's tons of stuff there. I spent like a couple hours this morning just going through everything. So, and there's an Amazon page listing all of her 191 products. They say 191 books, but she was horrified and said, no, I've only written 109. But I think that Amazon's including the CDs and we haven't even talked about the magazine you created, but we don't have time. So we have to talk. What's the name of it? Is it still being published?
The Out of Body Travel Foundation Journal, and there's also Mystics Magazine.
Okay, so there's something I want to get that in before we end. All the music in the show you hear at the beginning and the end are by Mike Freeman, Zona Vibe. You can check out jazzvibe.com. He has recorded videos of his performances, his ways to get his CDs there. Check him out. He's a wonderful vibe player. And tonight, before we leave, as we're leaving, I'm going to play a song called Clutch the Hutch as we go out. Hutch is Bobby Hutchinson, who was a fellow vibraphonist from the past that Mike admired, so we'll be playing that tonight. You can find Marilynn, as I said, at outofbodytravel.org. Or, tonight, if you're out and about, astral projecting, say hi as you go by. What the heck? Thank you so much for taking the time with us. It's been fascinating. I have 1,000 more questions, but I have 60 more seconds. So, Clutch the Hutch by Mike Freeman. Thank you so much, Marilynn, and definitely 3-4 months down the road, we gotta kick this around some more. Thank you very much. Take care.
Thank you very much.
Right. Here comes Clutch the Hutch, everybody. Okay. Boom.